Battlezone Games presents Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger in The Watson Files. Battlezone Games invites you to join Dr. Watson for another exciting adventure with his good friend Spencer Holmes. With a diverse selection, Battlezone Games is sure to have what you're looking for. Check out the current inventory at battlezonegames.com. And if you haven't been to board game night on Mondays or ladies game night on Tuesdays, come check us out this week. The store is conveniently located just off Interstate 380 at 85 Centerpoint Road in Hiawatha. For other special game nights, check the schedule on battlezonegames.com. And now, let's join the doctor and see what story he has for us today.
Come in.
Hello?
Please enter, Mr. Dahlen.
Dr. Watson, is that you? Why is it so dark in here?
Ghosts like darkness.
Ghosts? Oh, yes, that's right. I believe you did say we would be hearing a ghost story this week.
Yes, a spooky ghost story. I'm sorry, I can't talk like that without cracking myself up.
Yes, well, that's okay. I rather enjoy your normal voice.
Well, thank you.
Almost as much as I enjoy a good game.
Ah, such as one you might pick up over at Battlezone Games?
Precisely. They have everything you would ever need. And you can even shop online at battlezonegames.com.
Well, that makes it easy, doesn't it?
It sure does. And I also enjoy the fact that I can go to the store and play games against other people from the area.
That sounds like fun.
Did you know that nearly 2/3 of the store is space set up for people to play? And they hold regular events for Magic, Warhammer, and Dungeons & Dragons, among others.
I did not know that. And how would one find out when these events are?
They can go to battlezonegames.com and click on Event Calendar.
Sounds good. Now, on to tonight's ghost story. It was a dreary night, full of thunderstorms and strong winds. But after the storm passed, it actually turned out to be a nice evening. I do enjoy the smell of a fresh rain. Anyway, after dinner, a nice thick Iowa chop as I recall, Holmes and I were enjoying some fine cigars on my patio when we were visited by a young man who seemed very insistent that we join him immediately. Although intrigued, we of course needed more than just his insistence to draw us away from the evening.
Dr. Watson, are you in?
Yes, out here on the patio. Now, who the devil could that be?
I suppose we shall find out.
Excuse the interruption, sir, but the door was opened and it's terribly urgent.
Yes, well, what is it then?
Well, I'm told that you know Spencer Holmes, and perhaps you could assist me in finding him.
Spencer Holmes, you say? Yes, I know of him, and I suppose you think he can help you?
Well, not me so much, sir, as my employer.
Your employer? And who might that be?
I'm not at liberty to say, I'm afraid. He is a very private man.
Well, I don't just give out information about my friends to unknown people. Besides, I'm not sure he could really help you anyway. Most of the stories you've heard about him are highly exaggerated.
Yes, that's the result of extremely poor storytelling, no doubt. Young man, you can tell Mr. Harrington that Spencer Holmes shall be happy to take the case.
Excuse me?
You work for Mr. Alexander Harrington, his butler, most likely. You were sent here to find Spencer Holmes because Mr. Harrington believes his house is haunted.
And how do you know that?
Must we go through the explanation every time? All right, the butler part is obvious. Your clothes, the way you talk. When you arrived, I heard your car approach from the east. There are only a handful of houses at the east end of town that still employ servants. You smell strongly of sage, which is most likely the result of a ritual known as smudging a home to rid it of negative spirits by burning a bundle of dried sage. The ashes are caught on a plate and walked around the house, supposedly cleansing it with the smoke. Now, most people acquire evil spirits with newly purchased properties, not ones they've owned for many years. I remember recently seeing something in the paper about Mr. Harrington purchasing the old mansion on the hill at the east end of town. Have I left anything out?
No, that is quite sufficient, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, yes, bravo. Brilliant deduction. Now, shall we, Watson?
I see no reason why not.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Holmes.
Of course, I'm always interested in a good mystery.
And I take it this is your associate, Dr. Watson.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
So why don't you fill us in on what you'd like us to do?
Well, I purchased the property as a summer home several weeks ago and was quite pleased with the investment at first.
Until...
Well, I sent several of my servants to clean and furnish the building ahead of our arrival next month. They reported seeing, well, a ghost walking around in the garden.
So they saw a person walking around in the garden and assumed it was a ghost.
They assumed nothing. It was quite obvious to anyone that the figure was an apparition.
You've seen it?
Yes, just last night. I arrived yesterday afternoon to look into the matter myself. I was not disappointed, as around midnight I saw the figure dressed in all black pass through the garden. It was most definitely an apparition of sorts.
And what makes you so certain?
Well, because the person I saw couldn't possibly have been alive.
And why is that?
The man that I saw in the garden had no head.
In my professional medical opinion, that would tend to make life rather difficult.
Yes. Thank you for that assessment, Doctor.
Also, the figure slid through the garden smoothly, as if it were floating, not walking.
Well, I must say that I am quite happy to take the case. It sounds like a most interesting mystery.
Oh, thank you, and you shall be rewarded handsomely.
Yes, I shall indeed.
If you are not successful, I'm afraid I might have to sell the property back to Mr. Rothschild, the previous owner.
Would he be willing to buy it back?
Yes, I spoke with him a few days after the spirit first appeared to my servants.
And what did he have to say on the matter?
He was quite familiar with the figure and said he believed it to be the spirit of the former gardener. Apparently the original owner of the house caught him becoming a bit too familiar with his wife and promptly beheaded the man out on a stump in the center of the garden.
And how did Mr. Rothschild say they dealt with it?
He said that they did not go in the garden after dark, and the ghost seemed to leave the house alone. He also claims it used to only come around occasionally, but this last week we have seen it every night.
I find it odd that he would want to buy back the property. Why did he sell in the first place?
Well, I don't like to speak ill of others.
Ah, so you bought the house from the bank?
Yes, actually. They had foreclosed on the property.
And Mr. Rothschild has since improved his economic standing?
Apparently.
Well, it's good that you have a backup plan, at least.
Yes, although I would prefer to avoid using it.
Well, if it's not too much trouble, could you set us up in a room overlooking the garden? I'd like to get a good look at this ghost.
Of course.